coming up.
And the potential criminal charges as outlined in that search warrant included what?
That department from the PCO for the Prime Minister. The documents state that in January of 2023, the Prime Minister requested briefs related to ArriveCAN. Is the RCMP aware of those briefs? I have two questions. Do you undertake or commit to reviewing the information that's presented to you following this order of the House? And will you update the public, commit to updating the public with what the outcome of that review is?
Okay, let's say a person had received security clearance, has read the report, and then they say, you know what, after reading the report, I don't think person X should be allowed to be in caucus Y. Is that a criminal offense?
The motion passed essentially programs the parliamentary law clerk to hand over files to the RCMP.
Yeah, just relevance, I know.
I understand the RCMP has a budget of $49 million for the foreign interference investigation. I'm just curious to see if there's a separate budget for the RCMP to investigate the ArriveCAN scandal, and if so, what's the amount for that budget?
So why is it that you had no problem confirming that when the Auditor General referred a matter to you, you were investigating, but you can't confirm whether a minister or his department or her department made a referral? You can't opine on that. You see the disconnect there?
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
Coming from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Michael Duham, Commissioner, thank you for agreeing to appear today. And Mark Flynn, Deputy Commissioner, thank you as well, sir, for agreeing to appear today. You have 5 minutes for an opening remarks. When you're ready, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee members, good afternoon. I'm here before you today following the committee's motion last month to invite the RCMP. I appreciate the work this committee is doing in order to respond to the recommendations of the Auditor General of Canada's report on the government's ArriveCAN application. I understand that this committee and Canadians are looking for answers and accountability around ArriveCAN. The RCMP is investigating and using all available information, including the Auditor General's performance audit report and the Procurement Ombudsman information. The RCMP has multiple investigations underway into these matters.
Commissioner, you referenced in your opening statement multiple investigations into these matters. Is this in reference to the ArriveCAN issue?
There are multiple, correct, Mr. Chair, there are multiple investigations going on.
How many in total, officer?
I'd have to refer to Mr. Flynn and see if we'd have an exact number, but numerous.
Can I get an exact number?
So with respect to this type of activity, there's a broad number of investigations specific to ArriveCAN. There is one investigation specific to ArriveCAN.
So one general investigation and offshoots from that investigation?
Not offshoots, but if you look at the ArriveCAN as well as other similar types of situations, there are many is the category I would put in. I won't give us an exact number.
Many. So more than 6?
I'll say yes.
Yes.
So that would be as precise as I can get to.
And is this in reference to contractors and subcontractors, or does it involve federal bureaucrats, and or does it involve government officials?
Specifically, I'm speaking to procurement irregularity investigations.
Okay. Again, the question put to you, is this exclusive to contractors and subcontractors, or does it involve government officials?
It involves the entirety of what needs to be looked at with respect to procurement contracts.
And I take from that the entirety could include contractors, subcontractors, the federal bureaucracy that dealt with those contractors, as well as the deputy ministers overseeing that department, and ultimately the ministers of the Crown who have ultimate responsibility. It's a catchment of individuals that potentially you're going to be looking at. Is that correct, sir?
I will not speak to any information with respect to the targets or subjects of the investigation. I will simply speak to the substance of it to give you as much information as I can today to be helpful.
Thank you, sir. I'm moving on to GC Strategies. On the eve of his call to the bar in the House of Commons, Christian Firth one of the two owners of GC Strategies, by his definition, GC standing for Government of Canada, had his home raided. I understand this was a offshoot or a part of the RCMP detachment. It was the Sensitive and International Investigation Unit that was responsible for the execution of the warrant. How many officers were involved?
We never speak to the number of officers involved in our policing operations. We did, in that instance, take the unusual step of confirming that we did execute a search warrant.
Who was home at the time?
I do not have that information.
Can you provide that to us?
I would not provide that. Again, that would speak to details of the operation and personal information.
And what was searched?
I will not be speaking to that either. That's an active investigation. That's
Christian Firth confirmed what was searched. He actually reviewed the 6-page search warrant. And just for the education of the Canadian public who are watching this, anyone has the ability to apply for a release of that search warrant, and information to obtain. In essence, someone can apply to a court, get a court order, and actually review the content of that 6-page search warrant. You agree with me, sir?
If the warrant is not sealed, that is correct.
Right. Was this warrant sealed?
I do not have that information.
Can you provide that to us?
We can determine that, yes.
Okay. So Christian Firth confirmed to the House of Commons that basically his electronic devices were seized. And I know you can't confirm nor deny that, but he supplied that as information. Has that furthered your investigation into criminal activity involving Christian Firth?
The RCMP is exploring and reviewing all of the information, as we do in any investigation that comes into our possession with respect to investigative materials.
And the potential criminal charges as outlined in that search warrant included what?
Again, I don't have that specific information.
Are you free to give us that information?
Once I determine whether or not the warrant was sealed and the contents of it.
Well,
we
I'll
will provide that
cut
as
to
part
the
of that.
chase. According to Christian Firth, who skimmed the 6-page report, it was in relation to fraudulent billing and forgery with respect to resumes. Would that seem accurate?
Again, I won't be confirming any information contained in the document that I've not
Okay.
read.
Mr. Firth had a partner. His name was Darren Anthony. Was his home raided as well?
I will not be commenting on that. Again, that would be confirming elements of an investigation that, to my knowledge,
Would he
has-
be part of the broader search of individuals who are part and parcel of your investigation with respect to Arrive Can?
Again, I will not be confirming targets of investigation that are not already publicly known.
Has Mr. Firth been cooperative with the police?
Again, we're speaking to details of the investigation that I will.
Has
not
Mr.
be-
Firth been arrested?
Mr. Chair, I'd love to keep answering these questions, but again, I hate to repeat myself. And
Has Mr. Firth been charged with a criminal offense, yes or no?
I'm not speaking to any of the details of our current investigation, but if a charge had been laid, that would have been made public.
Okay. The allegations that founded...
Afraid.
Thank
Coming
you.
back to you. Actually, I'll come back to you because I know you're next on the list. So, Ms. Yip, you have the floor.
So, Commissioner Duham, you originally declined the committee's invitation to appear, and I'd like to read part of your letter in response to the clerk. As you may be aware, a similar motion concerning ArriveCan was put forward by the Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates in October 2023, which called for the appearance of an RCMP official in respect of reports that the RCMP is investigating allegations of misconduct by 3 companies involved in the development of the ArriveCan app. The RCMP responded in writing to this request, noting that the RCMP was not investigating ArriveCan and was investigating allegations brought to our attention by Bottler AI. However, since that letter on October 2023, the RCMP has opened an investigation into ArriveCan. Respectfully, I am of the view that having an RCMP official appear on this matter would not serve the committee well, since we would not be able to comment in order to protect the integrity of the ongoing investigation. That said, the RCMP is committed to transparency, accountability, and integrity and remains open to the possibility of appearing at the conclusion of the investigation should that be necessary. Yours sincerely, Mike Duhem. Can you please tell us what changed your mind to choose to appear before the committee today?
Well, initially, Mr. Chair, when it was presented, it was to discuss about the investigation itself. And the reason why we prepared this letter to the clerk was to explain that we are not at liberty to explain or to talk about any of the details of the investigation. And I wanted the community to be apprised of that and then to make an informed decision, because the last thing I want to do is waste your precious time on something that we can't really answer to. So that was the purpose of the letter. And there's another letter that followed up on the 29th that we would be more than happy to come with the understanding that, again, that we cannot talk about the specifics of the investigation.
In the case of the Auditor General, if she detects such wrongdoing, she would hand that over to you. Now, when it comes to forged CVs and fraudulent billing, perhaps she might put her finger on that misconduct and then hand the file over to you for investigation purposes response. Ideally, that would be the way things work, but in reality, police investigations are very different. We have to obtain information from various levels of governments. It's a different process for the Auditor General. The question that a lot of folks are asking, both Quebecers and those elsewhere in Canada, is the ArriveCan investigation and the additional investigations that you first alluded to, will those investigations be made public at some point? I.e., will the outcomes and findings be made public, or only the potential criminal charges response? Well, when the investigation concludes, given the attention it's garnered, we do intend to make public announcements about what has been determined. Now, were there to be charges laid, the court documents are, of course, able to be disclosed, and those that are not able to be disclosed can be obtained under an Access to Information ATIP request. Now, our plan is to proceed in that manner at the conclusion of the investigation.
I would like to open my round, however, with a notice of motion that, as per the usual practice of the House of Commons Standing Committee, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts shall not meet during the Parliament's summer recess unless the requirements of a 106.4 of the standing orders are met. So that's a notice of motion that I have now put on the table, and I will continue with my round. Thank you very much. Commissioner, the Auditor General found, finding 1.50 of her report, that multiple amendments were made to those non-competitive professional service contracts, and approximately half of the contract amendments extended the contract beyond the original period, which prevented or delayed opportunities for other contractors to compete for work. These amendments also resulted in additional cost. Additionally, we know that GC Strategies had falsified resumes, provided inflated task or authorizations to the government, and it's possible that there have been a duplication of the task or authorizations to claim for higher billing. Is that part being investigated?
Again, I'll refer to what Mark mentioned earlier, that I'm not going to comment on any of the avenues that we're actually investigating.
Sir, you implied that you're investigating not ArriveCan, but an expansion of the bottler allegations of what those allegations were. So can you expand a bit more on this for the interest and understanding of Canadians?
Mark? Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'll answer that. That's okay.
Let's have him take a first crack at it, and then if he doesn't answer it correctly, you can answer it after
So,
that.
Mr. President, Mr. Chair, as you know, it was referred to us by the CBSA through Bottler AI, and then ArriveCan came in after that, and there are multiple other complaints that were made that we are currently investigating. And I'd invite Mr. Flynn, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chair, to add to my response.
Yes, to add some precision to that, all of the additional investigations I referred to earlier are not specific to ArriveCan CBSA or the Bottler AI matter. They are broader procurement matters that, as you can understand, as there's more attention in this space, that there are additional investigations and complaints that come to our attention.
Okay, well, it was testified in Mr. Firth's House of Commons appearance that Diane Daly, a CBSA official and former procurement manager, helped GC Strategies to write the RFP that they eventually won. So are you investigating that?
Well, Mr. Chair, I'm not going to comment on the specifics of the investigation. This came up through a committee. I'm not at liberty to explain any further with regards to our criminal investigation.
In March 2022, Ms. Daly sent an email to Bottler demanding that they turn over all their records to Dalian and Cordedix, even though they had no contractual obligations to do so, documents that were evidence of misconduct. Have you seen any additional indication that certain officials went out of their way to mess with the evidence of misconduct?
Again, Mr. Chair, I'm not going to speculate or even respond to any questions that's pertaining directly to the investigation.
Well, I'll keep asking the questions, and you're here. I'm a guest. I have a little bit of time left. According to you, Commissioner, would it have been possible for a company like GC Strategies to operate without support from government insiders and networks?
Mr. Chair, that's not for me to answer.
I'll try an easy one for you. How did you decide that the report warrants an investigation?
Mr. Chair, we received a complaint, assessed the complaint, and began our investigation.
What's the difference between a review and an investigation?
As soon as we get a complaint, it's an investigation.
How long did it take for you to decide to investigate?
Mr. Chair, I don't have the exact timeline. I can go through some of the timelines that we got from the time we got the complaint.
When did you receive the allegations from the Bottler?
It was from CBSA. It was January 31st, 2023.
And when did you apply for, when did you start an investigation process?
I don't have the exact time the next day. I don't have the exact information on that, but it would have started subsequently after the complaint.
According to your investigation's mandate, what would be considered criminal activity in this case?
Well, I'm not going to refer to this specific case, but any investigation that we do, there's a series of offense under the criminal code that could apply to investigations that we do.
The Auditor General in her report said she found no evidence to show that some CBSA employees complied with the agency's code of conduct by disclosing that they had been invited to dinners and other activities by contractors. Mr. Cameron McDonald and Mr. Anthony Atuno have been named in the GC's insider contracts. Are you investigating their associations and their contact throughout the ArriveCan project?
Again, Mr. Chair, this is part of the investigation. I'm not going to comment on.
I believe those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Beginning our second round, Mr. Barrett, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Commissioner, you confirmed that the RCMP raided the home of Mr. Christian Firth of GC Strategies, and you took the unusual step of informing the public of that search. Why?
Mr. Chair, I can answer that. That decision was based on the fact that it had been revealed publicly and that there was public visibility in front of that location that demonstrated the RCMP was there. So at that point, it becomes a fool's errand to attempt to cover the fact that we were there and that we were executing a search warrant there.
So are you able to take us through the scene? If Mr. Firth was present, Mr. Firth told us that the RCMP searched digital devices. Is that true? Are you able to confirm that that's in fact what happened?
I am not able to confirm at this time.
So Mr. Brock asked you before, I want to cover these questions again. Has Mr. Christian Firth been arrested?
I'm not going to confirm that.
Has he been charged?
As I stated earlier, if Mr. Firth had been charged, there'd be a public record of that.
So is there a public record of any charges being laid in relation to your investigation into the ArriveCan matter?
Not that I'm aware of.
We're in possession of an access to information document. It's A2023-00306. It's a memorandum for the clerk of the Privy Council from that department from the PCO for the Prime Minister. The documents state that in January of 2023, the Prime Minister requested briefs related to ArriveCan. Is the RCMP aware of those briefs?
No, Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of any briefs.
So the document, Commissioner, goes on to say that the Prime Minister raised the issue of ArriveCan with the clerk of the Privy Council. Is the RCMP aware of those conversations and their contents?
No, Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of any conversations with the Prime Minister and PCO as well as the contents.
So if it's helpful to the RCMP, I'd be happy to furnish you with this ATIP. Would you like it?
Again, it doesn't involve us. We want to make sure that any document that's brought into investigation is done properly. So you could keep the ATIP for now, sir.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that those diligent folks from your agency who are behind you there caught that ATIP number when I offered it and can access that file. In the Auditor General's report, she noted that she referred information related to the cozy relationship of CBSA officials and certain vendors to the RCMP. Is that being investigated, Commissioner?
Again, Mr. Chair, we have multiple investigations ongoing based on information that were collected, so I'll leave my answer to that.
So it's important for Canadians to know if senior officials from the Liberal government are being investigated for criminality because there's been a reference made to you by an independent officer of Parliament. You said that you're unable to tell us who is the target of any of your investigations. So my question is this: if the evidence leads you there, will you commit to Canadians to interview any senior government official, including any minister, including the Prime Minister, if those conversations or interviews would be germane to your investigation?
Well, Mr. Chair, I can commit that our team will follow every single lead of investigation evidence and interview the people who we must interview in our investigation.
So that would include anyone, including senior government officials or elected officials?
That, Mr. Chair, would include anyone.
On the topic of documents, Min Doan, who's the Chief Technology Officer, is alleged to have destroyed thousands of documents related to ArriveCan. Are you aware of those allegations?
Mr. Chair, I am not. I'd have to defer to Mr. Flynn, see if he is aware.
Again, that would be a matter that would or could be part of an ongoing investigation, and we would not be speaking to that today.
Could you tell us, with my last question, what penalties the intentional destruction of documents that are the subject of a criminal investigation, what are the potential penalties that someone would face if they were charged and convicted?
So in the context that you're asking the question, I believe it'd be inappropriate for me to get into details. However, I can very cautiously move outside of the context of the question, if you'll allow me to.
Please.
And say that anyone that takes any steps that thwarts a criminal investigation can face consequences for doing so. There are numerous offenses that could be applied in those situations, including obstruction. But I do not answer that in the context of the initial question. I just simply say, to try and aid you in your work today, that any destruction of documents that are relevant to a criminal prosecution with intent to interfere with that could face criminal consequences.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner, you mentioned earlier that the leader of the Conservative Party sent you a letter demanding that you investigate ArriveCan. How does that impact your independence, and how did you respond to that letter?
We, Mr. Chair, upon receiving the letter, he responded to Monsieur Poilievre with regards that we are assessing all the information part of the overall investigation.
Can you provide members of this committee with a copy of that letter and your response?
I'd have to follow up with the team, yeah, if I can, yep.
Okay, thank you. Now, given the nature of what's been happening in the media and the questions that have been asked today, do either of you feel it's appropriate for the Leader of the Opposition or other political officials to attempt to interfere with the RCMP's independent work in investigations like this?
So, Mr. Chair, I would say that no one should interfere with the work of an ongoing investigation, regardless of the police organization that's leading that investigation.
Now, I've seen some allegations from some Conservative members that the RCMP is at the beck and call of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Is that true?
No, it's not, Mr. Chair. We have complete police independence since I've been in the chair, in my previous chair as well. The only dealings I've had with the Prime Minister or the Minister or other ministers is briefing on files, and I would say that it's more or less a one-way briefing more than anything else, and answering questions.
You said the Auditor General was prepared to cooperate with you, but it's my understanding that you didn't ask for all of her files. And yet, this committee got wind of certain information, for example, a list of officials and public servants who accepted invitations to events, whereas it clearly violated the Code of Conduct. For example, and this can give you a sense of who's implicated with GC strategies among public servants, this kind of information that was sent through to the committee, is that the kind of information that you'll be going after using your own means, given that the Auditor General, knowing full well that the Auditor General has already done that work? Response. Well, when it comes to a criminal investigation, we have our own processes, and that evidence must be collected in a legal manner. Now, of course, anything collected by a parliamentary committee is subject to parliamentary privilege. Now, as I answered previously, it's sometimes a complex affair to get your hands on evidence when things are protected, for example, by parliamentary privilege. Question. I'm sure that if you asked the committee's permission to share the information with you, as we've done in previous occasions, the committee would have no issue providing you with the information that you require. Moreover, it makes me think this. Given the ArriveCan saga and your decision to cast a broader net than Butler AI and a general investigation of ArriveCan, did you listen to the proceedings of parliamentary committees? Is our work in some way helpful to the investigation led by the RCMP? Response. Of course, your work can always be helpful and useful if that information and evidence is permissible. Now, when parliamentarians are able to provide us with information, well, there's a whole issue of police independence. Now, that documentation that is submitted to us has to be done in an official manner so that when charges are laid and it goes to court, it must be legally permissible.
Commissioner, you said you're investigating the ArriveCan scandal, the Arrive scam, because of the Auditor General's report. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, you would say, Mr. Chair, that it initiated in January 31st, 2023 with the referral from CBSA when it was Butler AI, and then it grew from there.
Okay. So the Butler AI investigation caused you to open an investigation into ArriveCan. It was not a reference from the Auditor General?
I'll ask Mark if you can clarify, but initially the complaint that was received, or the referral that was received to us or sent to us, was with regards to procurement process in general. And then...
Yeah, it's difficult to be precise on the timing of which elements, because when we have different sources of information coming in
Sure.
that generated the start of it, we can follow up, but again, likely that detail will be something that the investigators will not want to be made
Sure.
public, so we can follow up though.
So you have the work of the Auditor General, that report. You have multiple other investigations that are being pursued through officers of Parliament. We have the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner, the Information Commissioner, the Privacy Commissioner, of course, the Procurement Ombudsman completed a report, completed an investigation. The Lobbying Commissioner has received complaints and information related to this file. Have you been working with these other investigatory bodies?
The challenge that we have, so the question was asked earlier of a similar nature. The challenge that we have when we're involved in criminal investigations is that there are procedural rules, legal rules, privacy rules, and different rules with respect to criminal liability depending on which process you're in. So when we look at it from a law enforcement perspective, something that the Auditor General or parliamentary committee may be able to compel someone to come and speak to, they are protected in doing so in some of those processes, or there may be a determination later that the person did not provide that information of their own free will, and therefore we can't use it. There are times where that actually creates significant challenges for our investigation, where we will learn something, can't use it, and then there are subsequent questions about how we are pursuing certain investigative avenues that are based on a process that's not fair to the accused.
Have you requested or received documents from the government in your investigation of the $60 million Arrive scam?
Again, that relates to details of our investigation that we won't be speaking to, and I don't have all of that information to provide that detail, even if it did not.
So we've seen the government hide documents and information from the RCMP before, including in the Prime Minister's illegal vacation to Billionaire Island and his SNC-Lavalin scandal, where cabinet confidence was invoked to protect what is a political problem. If you're met with the same obstruction in this case, what will the RCMP do to recover that information, or is cabinet confidence just the end of the road?
So I'm not confirming whether or not there was any claims of any privilege on this, so just to be clear on that. We pursue all the legal rights that we have in our investigations to gather all the information that we can lawfully obtain. So,
Commissioner, we heard shocking revelations about the Sustainable Development Technology Canada, otherwise known as the $1 billion Green Slush Fund, that the $319 million tax dollars had been appropriated where conflicts of interest were indicated. This is found in the Auditor General's report. Are you aware of these findings? A quick yes or no, if you could, please.
Not in the finest detail there, Mr. Chair.
The House has ordered that the documents, the work product of the Auditor General, the documents from Sustainable Development Technology Canada, the documents from the Industry Minister, all be delivered to the Parliamentary Law Clerk and delivered to the RCMP. I have two questions. Do you undertake or commit to reviewing the information that's presented to you following this order of the House? And will you update the public, commit to updating the public with what the outcome of that review is?
Well, Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of the discussion that took place, or if there's an appetite to share it with the RCMP. I would say that I am open for a review, providing that the information that we receive can be disclosed and obtained in a legal fashion. So if there is a follow-up to do, that we can do the proper follow-up.
Perhaps just saying what's on the mind, I think, of a lot of people. It's becoming increasingly disturbing watching individuals question the operational independence of law enforcement in this country. Just earlier today in Ethics Committee, the Conservative MP for Brantford Brant, Mr. Larry Brock, outright questioned the independence of the RCMP by claiming that because the Commissioner of the RCMP is appointed by the Governor Council and that they report to the Minister of Public Safety, that the RCMP has a political agenda when they act in their role. So I really do want to know your reaction as to with that type of insinuation, that the RCMP is not in fact operationally independent and is instead being governed by political interests.
So, Mr. Chair, I can confirm that the RCMP is, the operational independence exists. As I mentioned earlier, the only time I've had a chance to sit down with the Prime Minister or a minister or other ministers was to brief on key operational files for situational awareness only. Never once have we been subject to interference or suggestions or pressure to do something, and I can confirm that for 37 years of my career, from the last 6-7 years dealing at this level, I've never been asked to do anything, and I'm sure Mr. Flynn could probably add to that.
I would agree, and from an RCMP perspective, we take great pride in that, and you'll hear it in my voice whenever I've been questioned with respect to direction in the past. It is part of our training. It is part of our DNA. We have that all the way from our early careers, whether we're involving municipal, council, provincial members of Parliament at the provincial level or the federal. We work very independently and without influence.
Thank you for that. No, I personally am very concerned with this type of rhetoric because I believe that it erodes and corrodes trust in our democratic institutions and in the operational independence of the RCMP. So I'm just wondering if you can perhaps help us understand how disinformation, especially coming from people that are supposed to be credible, that have a large following perhaps, how does that impact our public institutions and the work that you do, especially in open investigations?
So I have to be cautious, again, with respect to misinformation. I always like to remain neutral in all of these appearances and to provide the information that we can without impacting what our mandate is. So I take great pride in my work. I'm here as an official to help with the committees, and we like to focus our attention to providing assistance to committees. And that's where I'd like to keep my testimony today.
Turning now to start of the third round, Mr. Genuous, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Just following Ms. Bradford's question, are you saying that revealing names in the NCCOP report would be a criminal offense?
Any name in the NCCOP report that is classified, that was revealed by an individual who had access to that information through proper means, security clearances, etc., would be committing a violation of the Security Offences Act.
Okay, thank you. Now, of course, the government can change security classification of names. There's a difference between changing classification, revealing classified information. But I take your point that for a person who had access to classified information, revealing that information would be an offense. What about a case where a person might imply a name? Perhaps if a person said that after reading a report, they think a certain named person should not be allowed to join or remain in a particular caucus, would that implied reference to a name be a criminal offense?
It's something that would be reviewed to determine whether or not there's an offense that's there, but it really depends on the circumstances and the detailed circumstances of how the person learned of that name.
Okay, let's say a person had received security clearance, has read the report, and then they say, you know what, after reading the report, I don't think person X should be allowed to be in caucus Y. Is that a criminal offense?
So again, that depends on where that individual did it and the classification of that name.
Suppose this individual has received security classification, security clearance to receive this information, and then they say in public, in front of a microphone, having read the report, I don't think person X should be allowed in caucus Y. Would that be a criminal offense, a violation of the Secrets Act?
Again, that would be something that we would have to look into to determine.
Okay, because there is a CBC story published on June 14th that says, after reading an unredacted report from one of Canada's intelligence oversight bodies, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says he now thinks that independent MP Han Dong shouldn't be allowed back into the Liberal caucus. So I will share that information with you for your consideration. I believe very much in the importance of adherence to the rule of law, of course. Now, we have an extraordinary situation before us today. I think you'll agree it's extraordinary. We've got senior RCMP leadership before a parliamentary committee in a context where concerns about NDP Liberal government corruption has brought us to the point of having multiple different criminal investigations involving federal government corruption, multiple instances involving ArriveCan contractors, as well as other investigations. Could you just help us go through and itemize all the investigations that are ongoing involving the federal government or relationships between the federal government and external contractors?
That is not something that I have the information that I'm able to provide to you today. You're asking for a very broad number of things in that question that I don't have access to that information. And it would, in the context you're asking is about active investigations, it is not something that we would respond even if I had that information.
Okay, it's interesting that you said it's very broad, and maybe that's illustrative of the problem, right? I mean, I'm asking you just to identify all the investigations that you as the RCMP are currently conducting involving government corruption or corrupt relationships between contractors and governments, and you've told me that they're too broad a list. It's too big a list to share. Just on ArriveCan, then, if you could walk through the various investigations involving ArriveCan and ArriveCan contractors. So you said there's the main investigation that started kind of post Auditor General's report. There's another investigation involving the same contractors. How many different RCMP investigations are ongoing that involve this core group of suspect contractors?
Clarification, I didn't say in the initial part of your question, I did not say that the list was too broad. I said the question was too broad. With respect to the number of investigations specific to ArriveCan.
Sorry, I don't think the question is that. I'm just asking how many police investigations are there into government corruption? There would have been a time when it would probably have been easy to say there are none, but we're living in this different reality with the current government. So, how many investigations are currently ongoing involving government corruption? That seems like a pretty clear, straightforward question. Just how many are there? And
I think, Mr. Chair, it would be jumping to the fact with regards to corruption. We are currently investigating several files that are looking at the procurement process that could lead to an element of corruption. But at this point in time, I'm not saying that we're anywhere close to that. And again, I don't want to get into any details of.
You haven't laid charges yet, right? But there are investigations into it, right?
There's, as I mentioned earlier, there's numerous investigations, and with investigations, you can open up the criminal code. There's a variety of offense there that can be applied when we're dealing with an investigation. And again, I will let the investigation continue its pace, and any evidence that brings us forward to a criminal accusation, we will act accordingly.
Thank you very much. That is the time. Ms. Shanahan, you're next for 5 minutes, please.
Well, thank you very much, Chair, and I thank the witnesses for being here today. And indeed, I don't think there's a member of this committee that would seek to prevent or interfere or otherwise jeopardize the investigations that you're doing. And so that's why I'm very surprised at the line of questioning that colleagues on the Conservative side are pursuing, but maybe it's because one of the individuals mentioned is a card-carrying member of the Conservative Party, so could be that there's something to hide there.
Commissioner, can you confirm that the next general election will not impede or interfere with your multiple investigations into fraudulent procurement practices and the potential laying of criminal charges?
Mr. Chair, as I mentioned earlier, the independence of policing is a key thing for us, and it's respected, and we will not change the course because there's a general election.
So the answer is no, it will not.
That's right.
Thank you, Commissioner. To either gentleman, the majority of MPs in the House of Commons voted for a Conservative motion that orders the Auditor General, the Department of Industry, and SDTC, the Green Slush Fund, to collect and submit them to the Parliamentary Law Clerk. The motion passed essentially programs the Parliamentary Law Clerk to hand over files to the RCMP.
Yeah, just relevance. I know we flip back and
Oh, for
forth
God's
on
sakes.
topics, but this is, we're here today to discuss ArriveCan.
Well, I'm going to allow, I give latitude. This is a matter before Parliament. Mr. Brock, you have the floor for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Nice try, Ms. Shanahan. To hand over files to the RCMP, they will be delivered to the RCMP headquarters. Will you commit, Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner, to undertaking a review of those documents?
I can say that any information that comes to the RCMP will go through appropriate level of review, using the appropriate resources to do so.
And I don't know if you recognize the importance of a thorough police investigation into the Green Slush Fund. It's been discovered that over 186 different conflicts of interest, not flagged, not acted upon, which resulted in the delivery
Point of
of
order, Chair.
300.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to have lots of time to talk about the STTC. If the Conservatives are bored
That's
with
not
the
a point of
ArriveCan,
order.
we can certainly conclude it.
Ms. Shannon, that's not a point, but I will note your willingness to have the RSP back for the Green Slush Fund. Mr. Brock, you have the floor.
Yeah, it's amazing the extent that the Liberal government will do to block our attempts to get to some answers. So 340 million taxpayer dollars sent out. If this were a publicly traded company, charges would have been laid, people would have been fired. There's such a difference between the public and the private spheres. So will you give Canadians and parliamentarians your commitment to reviewing this as swiftly as possible?
Mr. Chair, I think Mark was pretty clear on the information that we'd receive and the actions that we would take.
Thank you. Now, I listened very carefully, Deputy Commissioner, to your exchange with my colleague, Mr. Barrett. Mr. Barrett gave you a hypothetical about potential charges, particularly in relation to the attempts by Mindone to delete thousands and thousands of relevant emails. Your response piqued my interest. Your response was, any person who thwarts a criminal investigation will potentially face consequences. And that's true for every Canadian, isn't it?
Correct, and for precision, my answer was not in the context of Mindone.
Right. No, I understand. It was in a general context, but applies to every Canadian. But the same can't be said for our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, who single-handedly obstructed your investigation into an obstruction of justice charge in his involvement in the SNC-Lavalin matter. Name one Canadian,
Point of order.
Commissioner.
We're not talking about SNC-Lavalin either. Relevant.
Chair, can we put an end to this?
No, I do have to hear points of order. Mr. Brock, you have a minute 40 seconds.
Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner, name one Canadian other than Justin Trudeau who can single-handedly block a criminal investigation. I'll give you some time to think about that.
I can take that question immediately. I can say that there is not a single Canadian that can block an RCMP independent criminal investigation, period.
Right. But Justin Trudeau did. Now, I'm looking at your conclusion and recommendation report into the SNC-Lavalin matter, and I'm looking at paragraph 23, which you probably don't have before you, and I want to basically reiterate this so that Canadians can understand where this investigation is at. Although you reached a conclusion not to charge Justin Trudeau, you indicate in 23 that your report does not translate to the absence of a criminal offense. Should additional evidence be uncovered corroborating a criminal intent to obstruct, it would be recommended that the occurrence be reopened for further investigation. So if Justin Trudeau cooperated with you and released cabinet confidences, particularly in relation to the firing of Jody Wilson-Raybould, would that further your investigation?
Mr. Chair, I'd be speculating of the type of information that was received. We operate in the process, in the judicial process, And without having all the knowledge of the authority of the Prime Minister, I'll just leave it at that. But there are different rules governing different entities and processes.
Brief last question, Mr. Brock.
Do I still have time?
You got one last question.
Thank you. That doesn't answer the question. If Justin Trudeau released cabinet confidences to you, gave you full transparency, full accountability, would that be sufficient evidence for you to finally conclude whether or not reasonable and probable grounds exist to charge a sitting Prime Minister? Yes or no?
If we had the totality of the information, Mr. Chair, we would be in a position to better assess the outcome of a file.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner, I was hoping you might be able to share with this committee if the RCMP or can the RCMP compel information from the government or its agencies in order to aid in investigations?
So, Mr. Chair, my experience is, again, as I mentioned earlier, we need the right documents, judicial process to obtain information from other government departments so we can introduce them in a judicial procedures if we get to the point that we lay charges.
With both the chair of the committee and I being from New Brunswick, I would like to start off by paying respect to our 3 fallen heroes from Moncton. It's been 10 years this month since we lost RCMP constables Fabrice Gévaudan, Dave Ross, and Douglas Larch. Our thoughts and prayers are with their families whose lives were changed forever that tragic June day in Moncton. We will never forget the bravery of the 3 men and their RCMP colleagues showed protecting their fellow citizens at my home province in New Brunswick. One of the questions I have here today is, I understand the RCMP has a budget of $49 million for the foreign interference investigation. I'm just curious to see if there's a separate budget for the RCMP to investigate the Arrive Can scandal, and if so, what's the amount for that budget?
So, Mr. Chair, I'll start before I hand it over to Mark. I'll just start by recognizing I thank you for your comments with regards to our 3 fallen members. In fact, it's 10 years ago that this tragic incident, sad incident, happened that took the lives of 3 brave individuals, of 3 brave RCMP members. As for the budget, the amount that you referred to was 49.8 to 48.9. That was from was it HASA or? That was from an MC that went through a couple months ago, and Mark could further expand. But the budget for the organization is, there's a pot of money that comes into the organization, not always dedicated to a certain type of offense that we're actually investigating. And Mark can elaborate on the budget when it comes to federal policing.
Yeah, I think it's key, as the Commissioner stated, that the $48.9 million is a funding to look at a certain type of problem, not to fund a specific investigation. When you're looking at the broad federal policing budget, without getting into the complicated elements of it, we're over $800 million budget for federal policing. You'll see anything up to maybe $1 billion, anything down to $600 million. And we apply that based on the priorities that we have.
Thank you. Was there a specific number just for the Arrive Can investigation? That's kind of what I was looking for, that number, if you had it.
Okay, so we do not allocate a set number of dollars. There are investigative documents that do speak to budget projections for investigations, but they are certainly not limited to that. It is all just to inform senior management what an investigation is costing, so we can include that in our projections.
Okay, thank you. One of the questions I had, this has never been my sort of immediate file, but I've had a lot of questions about it over the past year. One thing that really struck me, and it could be coincidental, but I was curious to find out your opinion. The day that Christian Firth was brought before the bar, during that testimony, what's that?
Or
not the barn, the bar.
Oh, the bar.
yeah.
Sorry,
that's a different story. But apparently, like during his testimony, he said something that caught my interest, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he essentially said that the RCMP investigated his home the day before. It might have been the morning of, but I thought in my mind right now it's the day before. Is there anything significant about that proximity?
Nothing whatsoever. I'm not aware of any connection between the two activities.
Okay.
Nor, Mr. Chair, do we have the list of people when they're appearing and in front of what committee they're appearing, so.
Right. Well, no, this was the second time it had happened in history and the first time in 111 years, so it was very publicly known that something significant was going to transpire in the House of Commons. I had never heard of it myself, actually, to be honest, at the time, but I was curious to see if there's a link between the proximity. Do you feel the RCMP has the full cooperation of the Office of the Auditor General to do this investigation?
I know the Auditor General. We have a really good relationship, and I am convinced that we have 100% cooperation from her and her team.
Okay, thank you. One question I have, it's sort of a hypothetical question, but actually before I ask it, how much time do I have, Chair?
About 10, 15 seconds. You better ask your question.
Oh my God, 10, 15 seconds. Okay. Do you feel that you have sufficient resources, and what would the timeline be to carry out the investigation?
So, as I responded earlier, the timeline for any investigation, I never pronounce myself on the timeline because when you interview one person, that might open to 10 different people that you must interview afterwards. And I use also the example that our cell phones today, if you go 10 years ago, it was just a cell phone, or maybe 15 years ago. Right now, it's a mini computer. Some are encrypted, so it takes additional time for us. And this is just one cell phone. So you can imagine when we seize laptops and whatnot, it just takes more time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Up next is Ms. Yip. You have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. Have you had any issues receiving information from government agencies such as CBSA? In this case, in the RCMP's investigations?
I'm not aware of any issues, but I'm also not at a level to know all those details, but certainly nothing that's been raised to my attention.
What about other departments?
Again, nothing that's been raised to my attention.
Okay. Should Canadians have trust that Canada's rule of law is being upheld?
I have significant confidence in Canada's rule of law.
Well, that being said, do you feel that public officials are held to a higher standard than the regular public, or is it the same threshold of accountability?
Well, there are specific offenses that deal with public officials, anywhere from security clearances, depending on their role, breach of trust type charges, depending on which role the people are in. So there are specific offenses that apply to public officials, again, in the broad sense of it. I wouldn't call that a higher account. The law applies equally to everybody, and there are specific elements of specific offenses that would only apply if an individual is in certain positions of trust.
Turning now to Mr. Brock, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Point of order before you start my time. A number of members, including myself, have asked for information from both of these witnesses. These witnesses from time to time have agreed to supply us with information. Is it your intention to inform them as to what our usual return time is for the delivery? At the very end?
Yes, I'll do it, yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, gentlemen, a different topic. March the 20th, Minister for Public Services and Procurement Canada, Duclos, and President of the Treasury Board, Anon, addressed the Government Operations Committee, revealing that through a combination of tips and advanced data analytics, they had uncovered 3 subcontractors engaged in fraudulent billing across 36 government departments, amounting to nearly $5 million. They confirmed at committee, as they did at a national press conference, that all 3 subcontractors had been referred to the RCMP. The department officials then testified approximately 2 months thereafter, initially refused to provide the names of those subcontractors to committee,
only after we brought to their attention that parliamentary rules trump privacy. They actually revealed the identity of 3 individuals, not corporations, but individuals. Have those individuals, are they currently being investigated, or has the investigation been complete and charges laid?
So I am very much aware of the situation that you're describing, and I will go back to my previous statements that I will not be speaking to or confirming any active investigations into these specific incidents.
Is this an active investigation?
As I said, I will not be confirming that.
You won't confirm nor deny?
I will not confirm nor deny, but I go back to my earlier statements that the RCMP is involved in a broad number of investigations regarding procurement irregularities.
Okay. During that same period, both ministers outlined that this discovery, which traced back to almost 6 years, was merely the tip of the iceberg, suggesting a potential series of revelations to follow. The minister noted that 5 to 10, this was Duclos, 5 to 10 additional cases were currently under scrutiny. Subsequently, the Department of Public Services and Procurement Canada describes this as a first wave. They disclosed that another 5 to 10 cases were under examination. So, when Minister Duclos appeared at committee not too long ago, this was probably 2.5 months removed from his announcement of a potential second wave. I asked him specifically on 4 subsequent occasions, of those 5 to 10 companies currently under review for fraudulent billing, have any of those cases been referred to the RCMP? Wouldn't give me an answer. So, let's talk to the source. Has Minister Duclos or a member of his department, or Minister Anon or a member of her department, referred additional cases to the RCMP? I'm not asking you to opine on the nature of the investigation. I'm asking for a confirmation. Has a referral been made?
As I stated earlier, there are numerous investigations.
That's not good enough. Canadians need to know. There's no transparency or accountability with this Liberal government. I'm not asking you to jeopardize the nature of the investigation. I'm asking you to confirm. Has the Government of Canada made additional referrals? Yes or no?
You're asking me to answer a question in a manner that I cannot provide you the precision in which you're asking it. There are many ways that investigations come to us. I know that we are currently investigating several matters, as I stated earlier.
But why is it that you had no problem confirming that when the Auditor General referred a matter to you, you were investigating, but you can't confirm whether a minister or his department or her department made a referral? You can't opine on that. You see the disconnect there,
Actually,
Deputy?
Mr. Chair, I can give very accurate precision as to why that. I sat in a meeting personally with the Auditor General and the Commissioner where we had a discussion about the Auditor General referring information to us and offering her support in pursuit of a criminal investigation. What you're asking me for now, I have not personally been involved in those circumstances. I can say that organizationally there are circumstances that have led to us conducting numerous investigations into procurement irregularities. If I had had the opportunity to complete my answer in the question earlier as I attempted, I would have explained to you that I was lacking that precision because of a lack of my personal involvement or review of the information.
Can you confirm to committee that either of those 2 ministers or members of their respective departments have made additional referrals with respect to fraudulent procurement billing? Can you confirm? Yes or no?
I do not have that information with me.
I understand, but will you supply that to the committee within so many days?
I can undertake to review the files and determine if we have that information.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you so much.
Very much.